Can someone fast for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to lose weight? The simple, short answer to this question is, based on how it's worded, is yes. But there's some important points to note. Wanting the advantage of weight loss in Ramadan along with the ibadah is like other various ibadat that include dunya benefits. That's like someone who needs to do ghusl. He needs to shower from janaba, from major impurity. The intention in niyyah is to do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that he can be pure for ibadah. But he also wants to cool off because it's a hot summer day, or he just returned unclean from work. Likewise, one who wants to do wudu for salah, but he also wants to cool off or cleanse himself. Similar to that is one who goes to jihad for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also wants to obtain some ghanima. That's permissible by ijma'. Or someone who maintains silat al-rahim. He maintains the bonds of kinship for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also wants to reap the dunya benefits of prolonging his life and blessing his earnings. That's benefits a hadith specifies. من سره أن يبسط له رزقه أو ينسأ له في أثره فليصل رحمه. So the first point is, many dunya benefits like these that one gets from ibadat, they're usually inclusive within the ibadah, and they're attained even without a niyyah for them. So it's not what falls under riyah or shirk, and it doesn't nullify the ibadah. In fact, some detailed ibadat have dunya benefits mentioned in the proof, like silat al-rahim. Sometimes it's not included within the ibadah. That benefit is not included within the ibadah, but it's still permissible. Like someone who goes to Hajj for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but takes some items with him so he can sell it there. The Salaf said, لَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ جُنَاحٌ أَن تَبْتَغُوا فَضْلًا مِّن رَبِّكُمْ was revealed permitting that. That's why it was revealed, to permit trade during Hajj. A second point to keep in mind, and it's an important point pertaining to this. So the rule that I mentioned, if the ibadah indeed are done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the question states, but one also wants to reap a dunya benefit, that's accepted inshallah. However, if someone is in Ramadan and he says, I'm fasting for weight loss only, there's no ajr in that. That's rejected. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, من كان يريد الحياة الدنيا وزينتها نوفي إليهم أعمالهم فيها وهم فيها لا يبخسون. Whoever desires only worldly gain from his deeds, they'll get their deeds in full in this life. وهم فيها لا يبخسون. Nothing will be left out. You wanted it in this life, you got it in this life. Like the other verse, فَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَقُولُ رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا وَمَا لَهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنْ خَلَاقٍ. They say, رَبَّنَا, give us our benefits from our deeds in this world. For them, there's no portion left in the akhirah. In the hadith on إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ specifies that. وَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ لِدُنْيَا يُصِيبُهَا أَوْ امْرَأَةٍ يَنْكِحُهَا فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى مَا هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِ. That's someone who turns a noble ibadah, which has the highest goals, into complete means to attain low worldly benefits. It's doing the deed totally for worldly advantages. That person may even be sinned. In a good test, if you're confused with your intention, a good test is to ask yourself or ask the person, would I fast even if I wasn't going to get no weight loss or health benefits from this? Would I fast or no? If one says, I wouldn't fast if it wasn't for those dunya benefits, I wouldn't fast If it wasn't for weight loss, that's rejected, unaccepted, and that's what the verses that I mentioned mean. نوفي إليهم أعمالهم فيها. نوفي إليهم أعمالهم فيها. In the other verse, وما له في الآخرة من خلاق. He got what he wanted in this dunya. If he says, I would fast regardless for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but I also want the weight loss out of it, that's permissible. A third point to keep in mind on this matter is that we talked about whether the deed would be accepted or not. However, in such scenarios where one intends from the start of the ibadah a dunya benefit, that detracts or diminishes one's reward. Among the proofs establishing that is the mujahid, one who puts his most precious life online for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, leaving his comfort and facing nothing but hardships for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If he intends from the start to go for jihad and to get ghanima, then the reward is diminished by 2/3 and only 1/3 remains in the akhirah. If he gains no ghanima, then he is rewarded in full. And something to keep in mind, we're talking about one who left his house for jihad for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to attain ghanima. But one who left for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely without the intention of ghanima, but then after the battle's over, he's given a gift, then that doesn't diminish the reward. And my advice is to keep your intention in ibadat purely for the sake of Allah, even when it's permissible to attain dunya benefits. One does a deed totally for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yet struggles as to whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept it or not. Don't add to the problem by tagging on dunya benefits in your intention that you may automatically get already. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْتُونَ مَا آتَوْا وَقُلُوبُهُمْ وَجِلَةٌ أَنَّهُمْ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ رَاجِعُونَ. Those who give, in the verse talking about charity, but other deeds are like that. Those who do deeds for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yet their hearts are full of fear whether those deeds have been accepted or not. And Aisha radiallahu anha asked the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is this about the one who drinks alcohol and steals and commits adultery? He said, no, O daughter of the Siddiq. It's the man who fasts and gives in charity and makes salah, but he fears that those deeds will not be accepted. أهوى الرجل الذي يزني ويسرق ويشرب الخمر قال لا يا بنت الصديق ولكنه الرجل يصوم ويتصدق ويصلي وهو يخاف ألا يتقبل منه. Righteous people do deeds completely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yet fear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may not accept them. Imagine if dunya benefits are added in the initial intention. The best is for one to keep his niyyah purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all his ibadat. The benefit of losing weight or gaining health through fasting comes regardless of whether you intended it or not. Intending that in the ibadah only diminishes the reward. And that shows how essential intentions are for ibadat. From the generosity and wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that deeds and ibadat come with enormous dunya benefits. Deeds return in good upon a believer in dunya and in the akhirah. وَلَوْ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْقُرَىٰ آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا لَفَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَرَكَاتٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Iman and taqwa bring barakah, blessing to your life. فآتاهم الله ثواب الدنيا وحسن ثواب الآخرة والله يحب المحسنين. ثواب الدنيا, he gives you reward in dunya for your deeds. They're automatically included. Good deeds bring about a good, happy life. من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن فلنحيينه حياة طيبة. Many specific deeds have specific dunya benefits attached to them, like صلة الرحم. It prolongs life and blesses one's earnings. Istighfar. Many dunya benefits to istighfar. Some of them are mentioned in the Quran. فَقُلْتُ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا وَيُمْدِدْكُمْ بِأَمْوَالٍ وَبَنِينَ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ أَنْهَارًا. One may do istighfar for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also to get the benefit of rain or wealth or children. My point is, when you know you're already getting the dunya advantages tagged along with your ibadah, when you're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, don't decrease the reward by intending dunya benefits. Keep your niyyah pure. Let me give you an example that summarizes that. We have two individuals. One says, I'm fasting totally for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 100% for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't do it for no other reason. But because he's fasting, he gets the benefit of his weight loss. His health gets better. He gets فَلَنُحْيِيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبَةً. He gets a happy life, as the verse I mentioned stated. Then you have the second, and other benefits. Then you got the second one who says, my intention is to fast for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also to lose weight. Both are permissible, of course. Both attained the dunya benefits, while the latter lost deeds to that intention at the start of the ibadah.